So open banking and pay by bank are indeed used interchangeably. I think that's fine with industry people talking about it with authority. Some merchants and their end users are not necessarily privy to the slight differences between the two. Open banking describes a much broader discipline of opening up your bank account data to third parties in order to provide a service, of which payments is one of those things. Those payments are initiated directly from your bank account, hence pay by bank. If you're selling pay by bank as a product, you should use the term pay by bank. If you use open banking to somebody who's not familiar with the technology, you run into a couple of difficulties because you start talking about opening up your bank account to third parties, albeit licensed, regulated ones, to provide that service. And if you're new to this term, it's kind of a scary concept to grasp. And if you are looking at it through a merchant lens, you are kind of instinctively thinking that perhaps it's a tricky sell to your end customers. Whereas pay by bank is kind of a tangible concept that is becoming increasingly common at checkout. And the clue's in the name, right? You pay from your bank account, you select pay by bank, you choose your banking app from the list provided, then you securely log into your bank where the payment is pre-populated and ready to approve with a single tap. And it's as simple as that. And it's much better than card payments, let me tell you that. So I think you have to look at kind of the application of pay by bank as a product. So how can we showcase this, I guess, as marketeers? And that really is kind of the brand of pay by bank. Is it kind of a generic, almost kind of democratized term, or is it something attached to the brand, in our case, the Volt brand? Talking kind of more generally about the space, some brands, fintech payments brands, have invested heavily in their brand marketing in order to be kind of associated and kind of resonate as a payment method. So Klarna are a really good example in the UK. They've obviously spent a huge amount of money on their brand marketing, and you literally select Klarna at checkout. That is obviously a kind of different payment type in terms of buy now, pay later. Another good example is Pix in Brazil, which is a kind of essentially mandated payment scheme from the country's central bank. I think a measure of a brand that becomes a payment method is when that brand name becomes a verb as well as a noun. So you can Pix somebody, which sounds weird as an English person talking about it, but it works in Brazil. I think with Volt, we've invested very heavily in our product and kind of our B2B proposition for merchants. So we don't necessarily have the kind of customer-facing recognition of a strong brand, but I think that's fine. That's growing organically. There are other ways to achieve kind of mass recognition that Klarna have done. So what we've really focused on is, I suppose, doubling down on that pay-by-bank terminology, showcasing that as a strong brand with helpful copy, strong demos for new merchants, and also a few kind of helpful pointers for customers who may have not used pay by bank before, in terms of emphasizing its benefits of speed and security and ease. And those are really emphasized when you consider the legacy payments that basically most of us are still beholden to. Certainly in the UK, if you go to make a card payment, for example, I tried to pay my milkman. It's 2024. Yes, I still have a milkman. That's something I quietly celebrate. But he only accepts card payments. He thinks he's modern by doing that, but he's not. Sorry, John. And that involves kind of searching for an actual card, a bit of plastic, on my phone with a digital representation of my card. It's still a card with that information on. I have to go and find some manual data and then actually input that manual data. So nothing is automated about that. With Pay by Bank, the whole thing is automated and secure. And added to that is the fact that my details are not shared and cannot be compromised by a ne'er-do-well or a hacker. So it's those kind of benefits are entrenched, and they're obvious as a first-time user. And we found at Volt somebody who tries Pay by Bank 80% of first-time users actually return within 1 month to make a repeat purchase. So people try it and they come back and they use it time and time again.
Product demos are a very good tool to show people how you can interact with the UI or the UX of the product's interface. I think we are making strides, of course, to create this to show people that it is as easy as paying for anything else with your phone, and definitely much easier than using cards. So I think product demos are a good tool to show people how that's done. Things like word of mouth are also quite important in getting people to understand that the process that they need to interact with this new payment process, which could be new for them, is not as difficult as they actually think it is.
So I think there are two elements to this. One is our geographic reach and product depth, the fact that we are live in 26 markets in Europe, plus Brazil and Australia with the USA on the horizon, offering our pay by bank capabilities to essentially one harmonized standard. No one else in this market can offer that. That's essentially our back end. And then that is very much complemented by our front end, or to put it in kind of layman's terms, our checkout and the quality of our checkout and that end user experience that we offer, which is not only standardized across all of those different markets, which, by the way, is an extremely complicated process to do and do well. But our engineering team have done a fabulous job in actually achieving that, and that's recognized by our merchants. But then it's also kind of optimizing that flow, and there are so many kind of subtle nuances in terms of colors and typography, recognition of bank icons, familiarity with returning users. So having kind of been involved in this process, and this is kind of standardized but also localized according to local preferences in different markets. And having seen that kind of live in these markets, it gives me great confidence that we have created essentially the industry standard on a global scale for Pay by Bank.
We have an opportunity to have a brand which is also quite fresh and new, because the market that we're in is pretty new in itself. So the way we brand Volt ultimately is also like a bit of a canvas for us to see how we can do that. And of course, the way we're doing it at the moment is trying to create a brand that's a timeless brand, and not trying to make something that is following in line with previous brands, so to speak. I know there's some brands out there that can go for more of a youth approach, or some that go for a bit of a tailored into a mature age type of brand, but we try to straddle both, because obviously the payment solution that we have is not technically made for one or the other person. It's pretty across all ages, so to speak. Yeah.
I think since money was invented as a concept, the most successful payment methods, albeit it was cash for so long, are habitual. They're defined by being a habit people are used to doing. I think the word habit, though, has slightly negative connotations, not least because it involves effort. In this digital economy and a very kind of technological age that we're living in, my prediction and my belief is that payments will stop becoming habitual and they'll actually start becoming invisible. And we're seeing that in kind of physical form with Amazon Fresh stores, for example. You walk in, you walk out. You're not interacting with a person, you're not interacting with a machine. The payment is taken automatically. In the digital realm, we are going to start seeing this with the emergence of variable recurring payments, which will essentially enable you to authorize or to store a bank account on file and make regular payments of variable amounts to a particular merchant. It's just something that requires setting up initially in terms of your bank account details and certain parameters. From then on, those payments will essentially be invisible, or a one tap or a one click, authorization, and boom, there's no effort there, there's no habit to get used to in order for that to become successful. Make no mistake, that is where open banking payments are going. This VRP model, which we talk about a lot in the UK, that's already happening in Australia with pay-to recurring payments, which is essentially an identical model. We'll see it also in Brazil with Pix Automatico. At some point also, we'll see it across the European Economic Area, although without getting too granular, it's quite a big, unwieldy project for an entire block of countries to manage, but it will happen. And yeah, I think that's when we'll see this kind of like en masse consumer adoption. Consumers, we kind of exist in this bubble sometimes in payments where we think it's something that customers enjoy doing, or we perhaps with the best of intentions say we delight customers. I think occasionally we speak to merchants and they burst that bubble and say, well, actually no one really likes paying, but they would like that process to be an easy and simple one. And what better way of making it easy and simple than making it invisible? And that's essentially what VRPs, which are powered by open banking, card payments won't really be able to compete with that, because they expire and they involve that manual data entry at the start. They simply won't be able to compete. So that is my prediction of a kind of adoption in the future of what would make a successful payment method.
One of the obvious challenges in this idea of going global is, of course, payment traditions, so to speak, how people interact with that. I mean, for example, in the Netherlands, pay by bank is something that's quite familiar to them. So it's a relatively easy thing. If you wanted to roll out something else out there, I think it would be quite easy to do that. Whereas in the UK, it's going to be a bit more difficult to do that. So I think the difficulties will lie also within the people's behavior of where you're trying to expand. So, of course, this is where market research can come in and try to understanding those patterns of how people interact with money in that location. But I think marketing also has the room to flex and bend towards the behaviors of the people where you're trying to expand. So I think that's ultimately where we then will bend and flex and try to do some research in how we can speak that language of the people who are there.
Yeah, exactly. It's this perfect blend of like standardization. That's what we offer, right? This kind of global standard for pay by bank. And I've spoken a little bit already about the kind of complexities of making that a reality across different markets. But standardization doesn't mean a uniform payment experience. It means a standardized payment experience. So if it was uniform, we would use, say, English in Portugal, which wouldn't really make too much sense. So beyond kind of base level localization, we do quite comprehensive research into different terminologies that resonate, like a direct translation of pay by bank, for example, in Germany wouldn't necessarily mean an e-commerce payment. It may mean settling a utilities bill, for example. So we look at what resonates and then we translate that to essentially check out brand assets, and we back that up with kind of very concise end user value propositions that are designed to educate, inform and reassure customers. And then from there we do find that first time users then kind of come back to us.
You can't forget, obviously, like easy is a universal language. Trust, universal language. So if those things are easy and trustworthy, eventually the ideas should spread.